So how did you end up as an email marketing consultant and coach, considering just how much time of your career was spent at media organizations?
Okay, so I will try, and you're going to spot that on GarageBand, aren't you?
I am.
So
Yep.
I, as you said, started my business in the my career in the broadcast industry, and was made redundant when I was on round 2 of my maternity leave. So I had a 6-month-old baby, and I'd always written as part of my job. So I worked in sales positions, but I was that person that whenever you were working in a sales position, they went, oh, you can also do the marketing, because obviously the two go hand in hand. So can you just help us with our website? Can you do this? Can you run the Twitter feed? Go on, you can go off and do a bit of Twitter. So I kind of dabbled in content at that point. And then when I was made redundant, I'd always thought, okay, I'd really like to start my own business. Didn't really know what I wanted it to be, but writing made sense. I'd always liked writing. So I started as a copywriter, but then soon learned that actually I didn't really like writing for other people very much. It kind of stripped away the love I had for writing, because it was something that I was being paid to do. I was like, oh, I've got deadlines and other people's tones of voice and stuff to consider here. And I wasn't really here for it, to be honest. I know lots of people, including yourself, who are very, very good at doing that. However, it was not for me. And I thought, how can I make this about me again?
No, that's what you've got to have. You've got to have. You've got to love what you do, for sure. And I was just looking through your career history, because despite us knowing each other for probably a year now, talking on and off, and now on the same, as a client of C2C. I'd never actually really dug deep into your career history, so it was interesting to sort of see, BBC and working as in all these media companies, and then it's like, oh, and then just little green duck. So I'm sorry that you had to go through redundancy, and doing it while you're on maternity feels very callous.
Was it bad? I'd love this to be a kind of rags to riches story, but it's not really. It was a really good opportunity to do something that I'd always really wanted to do. Had a bit of money behind me because they paid me off, obviously, when I was made redundant. And it was kind of now or never, or then or never. And also, I had a toddler and a 6-month-old at that point, and I was kind of seeing into the future a bit and thinking, how is this career actually going to pan out when my children are at school? I was already not really enjoying taking my daughter to nursery 4 days a week. So actually, as much as I'd like this to be, oh my goodness, I was at my absolute depths and I've clawed my way back out of the gutter. That's not really how it was. It was actually more an opportunity than it was a massive hardship.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. That there's always it's nice actually that you sort of see it in that positive light. I imagine at the time it probably felt a little bit more terrifying, but you've got almost 6 years of your business behind you as well to sort of back that up and sort of validate that decision in some respects. So look, what was your favorite media job, or what's your kind of best anecdote from working in media? I remember you posting something about meeting, oh my god, his name's gone out of my head, Peter Capaldi, which is a very different.
I haven't met Lewis Capaldi. Peter Capaldi was just wandering past my table at an awards ceremony I was at once. I've met Pudsey Bear. He was with Peter Andre at the time, so that was quite fun. And what's my favorite? My favorite story is being in the BBC bar when I was about 24 and Jeremy Paxman telling me off for being too drunk. I wasn't even drunk. I was pretending to drink shots to impress my friends because I was an idiot. And he came up and he went, "You need to stop drinking. You're too drunk." I was like, "I'm sober, Jeremy."
Sober, Jeremy. Did you call him? Did you not think, "Oh, Jezza"?
No, I didn't actually. I said I'm sober, but he didn't believe me.
No.
So, and I wasn't gonna have him grilling me. That would be terrifying.
Just him going at you. It's like, no, you are drunk.
Yeah, exactly.
Just going backwards and forwards. So look, I had my next question down here as what was the catalyst to move you to working with someone else? But from someone else for working for yourself. But it sounds like maybe was that always in your mind, working for yourself?
I think it was probably always, at least in my subconscious. My parents always ran their own businesses. I've never known them to do anything other than something for themselves. And all of my siblings, I've got 3 siblings, we all run our own businesses. So it kind of felt like it was inevitable. At some point, I was going to end up doing it. I just didn't quite know when or how. When I had children, again, it was amplified a bit because I thought, how's this going to work in the grand scheme of parenting? Yeah, I don't know whether it was something that I was consciously thinking about on a weekly, monthly basis, but it was definitely bubbling under the surface, because it was the first thing I thought of as soon as I was made redundant. I was like, right, now's the time.
Yeah.
So it must have been there.
That's pretty wild, all of you. I mean,
Yeah,
that's got to be
it's crazy.
see, that's part of the thing that I hope that I sort of instill in my 2 little ones as well, is that they see me sort of growing, working for myself, doing the hours, being there for them as well, but like them seeing the work and effort, and that they can have their own thing. But I mean, it is quite fascinating that all 4 of you are running your own businesses. So what's been the strategy for you then? I guess, how have you sort of worked your way towards email marketing as well? Because you said you started in as copywriting and then migrated away from that. So what was your kind of journey towards email? And then once you kind of found that, what has been your strategy and your thinking around kind of growing the business? And did you have a goal in mind for it when you started? It was just like, I'm going to start working for myself.
I had absolutely no goal in mind when I first started it. I had
Good.
no idea
Me
what
neither.
I wanted, and what I didn't even know what the 6-month plan was, let alone a 6-year plan. And I'm kind of getting for 6 years now. So I think it was just a series of not necessarily mistakes, but just learning what works for me and what works for my clients, and then reiterating until I find something that works. So in terms of the journey to kind of email marketing, so I was a generalist copywriter, but I tended to sway towards long form content, blog content, stuff like that. And then one of the long-term clients I was working with asked me to write their emails. And they were asking me to do things in a specific way. And I had some quite strong opinions about why they shouldn't do it that way. And at that stage, I didn't even really know why, but I just kind of knew that was not the right way of doing things. I can't even remember what those mistakes were now, but I just remember thinking, you've got it all wrong, and thinking, maybe this is something I'm actually interested in. And then I started working for a couple of other clients, writing their emails. And then I started my own email list. I should have done that first, really. But then I started my own email list, and that started kind of gathering momentum, and people were saying that they really loved my emails, and then things started selling. And then I thought, I might be onto something here. Actually, no, I didn't think I might be onto something here. Do you know what? I went on a bit of a random journey of discovery for how I could get away from done for you writing, and didn't even think about email, even though I was writing an email on a weekly basis. Didn't even think that might be my thing, even though it was my favorite thing to do every week. Idiot, not even thinking that the thing that I love doing the most might be the thing that I end up doing. And then I spoke to Chris, who we both know, and he went, why aren't you doing email marketing? And I went, oh yeah. And that's how it happened. It was literally a conversation. It was a very long conversation, but a very small snippet of a long conversation that made me go, oh yeah, I could try that thing. So I started doing done for you writing of emails for people initially, and then gradually have transitioned towards more the coaching and training and the educations type stuff that I do now. But it has been a massive journey of discovery. And I'm now I've got to this point, I've now got to the point where I'm trying to make things easier all round for myself and my business and my life. And that is the stage I'm at currently. Haven't quite cracked it, but it's getting there.
So was it Chris who said to you, why don't you just do email?
Yeah.
Did he give you the confidence? Did he give you the confidence that actually something which probably felt, and probably to a lot of people, that feels like a small facet of either a marketing plan or part of a tactical suite of, or a suite of, let's say that again, as part of a kind of tactical mix that companies may go out to market with. Like email feels quite small in a lot of ways, despite its sort of oversized impact and the fact that it's still kind of like the lowest ROI in terms of, you know, cost into to impact and all the rest of it. Like, was your hesitance anything to do with kind of looking at thinking that it was too small?
Too small, and also maybe too easy. Like, this feels like an easy route, and running a business is supposed to be hard, right? It's like I'm supposed to be hustling and striving, and I found the way I think about email was too simple, and I thought, how could anybody possibly need this thing that comes quite naturally to me, which again, with hindsight, is silly, because all of us have things that are our strengths and that we find easier than other things. But at the time I was like, is that really something that people will actually want to learn from me? Do I know enough? Was another part of it as well. But it did feel like a small part of a bigger, because I've always been quite big on social as well. In terms of my effort towards it has been a lot bigger than it has towards email. I always kind of thought that social media marketing would be the route that I would more naturally gravitate towards, because that's the thing that I've been most vocal about. And I didn't really talk about email. I just sent emails, and they were working, but they were not, it was not me trying to lead by example. I guess it was just me kind of doing my thing, and it was working for me, but I never really considered it to be something that other people might want to know how to do from me as well.
Yeah, that's been the hardest. It's been one of the hardest things for me to do. And we were talking just before recording, like me getting out of my own way and putting myself in my audience's shoes. Because like you said, you kind of explained, like with email, like you've just been doing it, it had been working, and then you realized that you had strong opinions about it, and you knew that you had a way and a fixation, and you've been very, very good at communicating that view on social. Whereas for me, like I know what I do, and I know that I'm good at it, and then when it comes to trying to communicate that, I sort of get in my own way. Like, have you ever had? It sounds like you were kind of battling with, or kind of going through some of those thought processes. Like, how did you, if you did experience that kind of blockage, how did you move past that? Or what have you learned sort of on that way of just kind of like being relentless with your communication?
I think I've always just paid attention since I've switched to email being my main focus. I paid attention to the questions that people are asking me, and if people are asking me questions and I'm able to answer them, or at least able to signpost them to somewhere that can answer their question, then that's enough. And I always kind of thought, well, I see all these big name email marketers out there absolutely smashing it with their 40,000 subscribers and making daily sales and blah, 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 and thinking, well, I'm not doing that. So therefore, what right do I have to teach this thing to people if I am not in that realm? And actually, as you know, and as loads of people will probably resonate with, you just need to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of the people that you're working with in order to give them the value that they need. And once I settled into that in my own head, that's when things started to shift a bit, I think.
Yeah, that's such a nice way of framing it, because there's always going to be people ahead of you, but there's most definitely people behind you, and it's kind of figuring out where on that, you know, on that sliding scale that you sit, and how you can feed that information along. And like, I'm trying to, I know you've given me that piece of advice before, because I've asked you, because I'm still sort of feeling my way on social media. It's not my field of expertise, like really deep expertise. Whereas you seem to have a natural affinity for just, I don't know, doing good work, sharing good things, and like imparting wisdom. So that's a really good way of framing it. So when it's come to some of the stuff you've been doing for your business, what has been kind of your biggest challenges in working for yourself, other than juggling family, kids, and sort of finding time to do the work?
Biggest challenge, getting through the daily getting up and thinking, I'm not cut out for this. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
I'm not cut out for this shit. And then having to, that was something that I would get not fixated on, but stuck on for weeks at a time, where I was just thinking, this isn't working, nothing's working, I don't know what to do. And just shortening that process of waking up in the morning and going, I'm not cut out for this, to, yeah, of course you are, get on with it, that's what I do now. But back when I was struggling to get clients, when you've got no clients and you haven't had any clients for 3 months, and you're thinking, yeah, like, just because of my mum and dad and all of my siblings are business owners doesn't mean that I absolutely can do this. Maybe I should go and work in the nearest supermarket. That was, I think it's all been mindset stuff. It's all been like, and I've generally, my mindset is pretty strong. And I've, even in the worst times, I've always kind of had this deep down belief that everything will be okay, but not being able to express how is quite difficult, and I think quite disconcerting for my husband in particular. He's like, how do you know everything's going to be okay? I just know.
That's so interesting. The opposite dynamic in this house. Like, I'm the positive one, and my partner is very much she calls it a realist, whereas I'm very much the optimist and beyond that. It's interesting you sort of call out the mindset aspect. Like, I had periods last year of looking at the old cash flow spreadsheet and just thinking, like, if I don't get something soon, like, how are we actually going to pay the mortgage? And that's a terrifying place to be in, and the inevitable, like, oh, I should just get a job, like, this obviously isn't for me. Yeah, it's a big one to get through. And it's interesting to hear that you're still, you still have those moments, even sort of 6 years down the line, where, it's obviously a very successful business. You've got multiple strings to the bow in terms of what you're offering to market, in terms of client services, courses, masterclasses, the whole lot. And it's interesting to hear that you still kind of grapple with those. I'm assuming that it's a lot less of the old devil on the shoulder these days, though.
Yeah, now I just think, oh yeah, it's that voice again, and carry on, because I know now all the things that I need to do in order to move forward, or move the needle, as the marketers and the salespeople will say.
Yeah.
I
just heard myself in your words there, and I was like, oh no.
Sorry. I know all that stuff. I know the things that make a difference. And so back when I was really struggling is when I didn't really know what to do and what would make a difference. And now I know all the things that have worked. And I'm not saying I've got everything figured out. I absolutely haven't. Things are going in the right direction, but it is reassuring to know that when I'm feeling like I'm in one of those, like, back against the wall situations, I've got some tools in my toolbox that I can, like, whip out and sort out whatever problem it is, which is nice and kind of, reassuring, as I say.
Yeah, I'm sort of 4 years behind you, so I am desperately trying to get to where you are, because whenever we've sort of had conversations in the past and we've sort of shared situations, you've always had answers for me, which has been it's been really nice. So what advice would you give to yourself from 5 years ago, as you were just sort of spreading your wings and flying the nest with Little Green Duck? Like, if you could go back to that start point, I think I know what you might say, but I'm interested to sort of see whether it's the same.
So one of them is a massive cliche, which you'll see all over social media all the time, and that is invest in people to help you. Like, I've always relied on learning stuff for myself, and that has been great in terms of the accumulated knowledge that I now have from making mistakes or working out what works for me and what doesn't work for me. Not necessarily in terms of making money, but in terms of my, like, time, headspace, energy. But actually paying someone money to help accelerate that process is a game changer. And when you said you're 4 years behind me, you're not 4 years behind me, because you're running faster than I was. I was kind of ambling along, and you're, like, catching me up now. So you're just you're not 4 years behind at all. You're 4 years behind in time, but you're definitely not 4 years behind in progress. So invest in people who you respect, and listen to the one or two voices that really stand out to you, rather than letting all of the noise get in, and because that's when the self-doubt has crept in for me. I think it's when I've been looking at social media and I see someone doing this tactic and someone doing that hack and someone trying this thing, and you try to do everything, or you think you should be doing everything, and then in thinking you should be doing everything, you do nothing. So actually just doubling down on something and going for it. And if it doesn't work, then you can change course, but changing course rather than being on 3 separate courses at the same time is much easier in my experience.
Yeah, it's committing to something that I've learned. Is like committing to a tactic and showing up, being consistent and persistent in doing that has stood the test of time for me. Like last year, I was looking at no clients in, I started to deviate and do the wrong thing, and I wish I'd just held true and firm, because I'm now starting to see people coming to me asking me advice, like booking calls and stuff, which is madness, because like when you sort of start this thing, you sort of feel like, how on earth am I going to find clients? And then to have them finding you is a really nice change. That's good advice, I think. So let's change direction a little bit. So you're, as well as doing or offering like email consultancy, would you call yourself a consultant? Or
I call myself a trainer, but it's not really something. I still don't think I've quite settled on the right terminology for what I am. You might have a few words in your head for what I am, but they're probably not appropriate for LinkedIn.
No, not perhaps not client attractant. We'll brainstorm after this.
Yeah, exactly. But trainer, consultant, I don't know. I'm not really sure what it is. Trainer's working for me at the moment because I do train people on their email marketing for their business. The thing I was very keen to get away from, as I going back to what I said about the beginning of my business, was the idea that I write emails for people, and some people still think that. And so I wanted to be very, very clear in my messaging that I teach people to do it. I don't do it. And there's various reasons for that, not just the fact that I don't like doing it.
Well, it's very time consuming, and probably for where you are and what you're doing, I'd imagine it's probably low value stuff, like people that, and I'll caveat that saying that it's not that your writing isn't good or that your expertise isn't valued, but in terms of the amount of time it takes to do it versus, training people to do it, working with more people, getting more people through and what have you, I imagine it's probably works better for you that way. But the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, as you hear my dog barking loudly in the background, there's a whole host of other things that you have started doing. I might have to just restart this question in a minute when the dog stops. Okay. I was listening back to the first one of these I did with Chris Bantock, and there's just her barking throughout it. And because I had these on, I didn't really hear her, but now I sort of have half an ear out just to check for her. She's such a...
She seems to be quiet now. I could hear her before, but I can't now.
Where was I? So as well as doing like the training stuff, you have expanded a lot of your offering. Like, how much of that was kind of a natural progression versus looking to have more offers to market versus just an inherent sort of desire from you to kind of go into either a course or doing your masterclasses? I'm sort of intrigued as to sort of the thought process and then the kind of strategy around what you're doing with those elements.
So again, it's been a bit of a journey of discovery, and it's mainly been motivated by the fact that, so I doubled down, and I keep saying doubled down. So I focused on email marketing at the beginning of 2023. So just over a year ago, that was when I hung my hat on email marketing and made it my thing. And then I've tested various different ways of working. And this again goes back to the way that works for my clients and that gets them the results they need, but also stuff that works for me. So I started by writing for people, soon realized that I was going to hit a ceiling and also couldn't work with as many people as I wanted to doing that. So knocked that on the head and set up a 6-month program. Then I realized that running a 6-month program with weekly group calls throughout the school holidays, particularly the long summer holidays, was an absolute killer. And last year I say it to people, I was running masterclasses on a weekly basis. So I was having to prep a full masterclass a week and then deliver it to my group. And it was like being forced to host a party every single week. And people were getting a lot from it and I was giving a lot, but it was exhausting. And so it got to the end of, like, as those first few people that joined that were kind of tapering off and coming to the end of their 6 months, I was like, right, I need to rehash this and work it into creating something that's term time only. So I created my now 5-week program that's got some accountability off the back of it, but all of it is term time. I don't work on my own business, or rather in my own business, in the school holidays at all, which has taken the pressure off massively.
That's smart. Yeah.
Caveat to that, I have one big client, Chris, who I work with like throughout the year, and that provides me with the kind of security of income to be able to experiment a bit. And so being able to have that in place so I could go, right, I'm going to try this thing, or I'm going to see how that works, has allowed me to sit back this year. So January this year, I was like, I need to make everything easier. I need to not take sales calls for my business anymore, because that was something that was taking a lot of my time and a lot of my energy and wasn't getting me the return on investment or time investment that my emails was. So I was like, why am I not writing more emails and taking fewer sales calls? So I've switched that. And again, it's a fairly big risk, because that was the only way I knew how to sell before, having a discovery call with someone, convincing them that what I was offering was what they needed, or working out between us whether it was what they needed, and offering it to them, and they either bought it or they didn't. So that has been both intentional and unintentional, I guess. I intentionally switched off that sales call tap, but I didn't really know how I was going to replace that until I started tweaking stuff and experimenting with stuff. And now I have the workings of an actual, some will call it a funnel, I will call it more of a kind of a journey that people, but journey is a terrible buzzword as well.
Yeah.
Some kind of buzzword that takes people from not knowing who the hell I am to being like one of my high ticket clients without me having to have 10 sales conversations with wrong people to get 2 people in the door, because it just wasn't sustainable in terms of the other stuff that I was doing and my family commitments and my other client commitments as well.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting point, and something that since doing the course with Chris and kind of really analyzing and looking at conversion ratios, like how many sales I needed to win, how many calls it took to win a sale. And then when you start to sort of look at the time investment from all of those, obviously for you reached a point where you're like, well, this is just not a sustainable or like optimal way to use my time. And now you've got, so I'm a subscriber to your daily email now, but that was a weekly thing. So is the kind of thought process behind the daily email to switch from, or to try and minimize sales calls and keep yourself in the inbox every day and drive? So I'm interested, because you've been doing it a little while now. So firstly, sort of talk about the sort of process that you went through, like the conversations that you were having with yourself or your coach or whoever about, you know, making this switch. And then if you can sort of look at, if you're prepared to, I realize I've put you on the spot here, talk about how it's doing in terms of results, because it sounds like you keep a close eye and have a good handle in terms of where your time is spent, what's the best use of that time. So if you just talk through a little bit about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so I've had this idea in my head for a while that a daily email might work for me, because I've got, so as you were saying, I think it was before we started recording, but as you were saying, I've got a lot of content in my head and in my Notion dashboards at any given time, and I was running out of places to put it. And I thought, I'm sending this weekly email and it's fine and it's doing fine, but I kind of wasn't really happy with fine anymore. I wanted to push myself. And so at the beginning of January, I actually wrote wrote an email to my list asking if people would be prepared to read a daily email. And I had about I had a list of about 375 people at that point. I've always had a really small list, and about 30 people replied saying, absolutely not, I'd unsubscribe. And I was like, oh, okay, I won't do that then. And it scared me off. It made me think, well, all these people are really engaged with me. They reply to me on a weekly basis. I kind of owe them not to annoy them. And then it was just in my head and it kept eating away at me. And I was thinking, I really want to do this thing. And then one day in March, I was just like, sod it, I'm going to do it. So I wrote an email to everyone saying, I'm going to start writing daily emails as of tomorrow. Just because I find if I say stuff like in public, I do it.
Yeah.
So I said it. About 18 people of about 450 at that point unsubscribed. So it wasn't too bad. It wasn't as many as had replied saying they would. And I thought, okay, well, this is where I start from, and just started writing them, started seeing what came out, what worked. I'm finding that writing a day, even though on the face of it, I've 5x, as they'd say in the LinkedIn community, 5x my workload in terms of email sending. I'm finding it easier than writing a weekly one, because every piece of I just before this recording, I ran a session with the latest cohort of my group program, and I was saying the more content I create, the more content I have, because people reply, they ask questions, I have interactions with people. Every interaction with a human sparks a piece of content in my brain, and so I've got this list of stuff I'm never going to get through to write to people, little snippets. I mean, some of them make absolutely no sense when you read them back. I've got one that says man covered in wasps, and I'm like, no idea what that means.
I like that one though.
Yeah, I know. I really wish I could remember what it actually means. But no, I mean, I've obviously used it as content at some point, but in the context of not knowing what the hell it means. But yeah, I'm finding it's easier. I'm making way more sales. So I'm coming up to the end of month 2 of daily emails now. Month 1 was better than I expected it to be, but it was still low in terms of sales, in terms of what I was getting for sales calls. Month 2 is looking way better, because I'm just kind of maybe being a bit braver with it and thinking, well, what's the worst that could happen? I'll send an email to people. They either don't buy the thing, or
I'll send them another one tomorrow.
Exactly. That is another thing though. Like, a weekly email felt like a huge pressure to deliver value, to get sales in the door. And now I'm like, oh, okay, if one flops, and none of them have actually really flopped, but if one flops, it doesn't matter, because I've got another opportunity tomorrow. And sometimes, like some days, I've sent 2 in a day. And I'm like, who is this person? I know.
That's bordering on stalking, Katie. That's crazy.
Or bordering on spam at least. But but people don't seem to mind, and I warn people. I let people know in advance that it's going to be a daily email. Like in my welcome email, I have in big letters, this is a daily email. If this is a mistake, then unsubscribe now. So people have the opportunity to walk away, obviously, but not that many people do. And it's and I've had about 15, 20 people now reply to me saying, back in January when you sent that message, I was one of the people who said I would absolutely not read your emails if you sent daily, and I prefer them to your weekly emails. So that's
interesting, isn't it? And it's like, in my mind, like just sort of thinking it through now, it's more a sustained conversation than suddenly popping up once a week with like, here's everything, and then just like disappearing for another 7 days. It feels, and knowing you and knowing the people that you work with in your audience, like it feels like absolutely the right call. So what have, like you say, sort of seeing more sales and fewer unsubscribes? I think you mentioned that you're obviously very much on top of the numbers in your list, and you keep a keen eye on it, and obviously you're in there every day sending new emails. So how has it impacted volume of subscriptions? Like, are you seeing more subscriptions now that it's daily? And what has it done to unsubscribes? It sounds like maybe there was a spike and then that's tapered off. Like, what do those two numbers look like?
So there was an initial spike of unsubscribes, and that's fine, because actually those were the people who were probably going to get annoyed by daily emails. So it's probably best they leave at that point, or they've they've missed an opportunity. Actually, a couple of people have come back. A couple of people have unsubscribed and then gone, I know I've unsubscribed, but actually you're talking about it on LinkedIn has made me really want to come back. So that's been quite a nice feeling as well. In terms of subscriber growth, I'm not sure about exact percentages, but my subscriber number is higher than it's ever been now. It's still not massive. I'm still only at kind of 530 odd people, but it hasn't affected my open rates, which is really interesting, because I thought that a weekly email with kind of 50-60% open rate on a weekly basis was one thing, but actually I kind of thought that people would pick and choose which daily email they read. So some people say to me, I read like 1 or 2 a week if they pique my interest, but I can't read every single one, and that's fine, because I'm still popping up and going hi, and my name's in their inbox even if my actual content isn't. But my open rates haven't been affected. In terms of engagement, what I'm doing is completely different to what I was doing before. So it's kind of not really a fair comparison talking about what the engagement is like. But I know that I'm making more sales that I can directly attribute to my emails, which is really interesting and a really nice feeling, because it kind of validates even further that I know what I'm talking about as well, which gives me more confidence then to go out and sell the things I'm selling.
Yeah, I wondered whether there was sort of my next sort of follow-up was like, practicing what you preach in terms of, yes, I can help you do your email marketing, and like, look, I email daily, whether there was more of and maybe you don't have to admit to it, but whether there was a pressure to do something like that, to sort of show, this is the way forward, this is how to do it. And as a second follow-up to that, like diving into a little bit around your ethos and methodology, or your opinions on what good email marketing looks like.
So I think part of the thought process behind the switch was that I got comfortable, and I know that I'm going to do another massive cliche, but growth does not come from a place of comfort. And actually pushing myself to do something that, even if I didn't know whether it was going to work or not, it's kind of as if I don't like using the word expert, but if I'm someone's go-to person for email marketing, I kind of have to have tried things that other people haven't tried in order to go, oh yeah, this has worked for me, or this hasn't worked for me. And also knowing the kinds of things that might work for the kinds of clients that I work with. And because I was operating in my like safe weekly email zone, I was running out of things to teach. I had my base level of stuff that I was doing, but now the more I do, the more I have to share with people. And that's why you've seen an uptick in the like digital products and the one-day courses and the stuff that's not just like the signature program, because I know that there's different people who are at different stages, and this one size fits all approach doesn't necessarily work for the approach that I'm taking to my own business. I just can't even remember what your question was, so hopefully that answered it.
No, that was perfect. And then the follow-up to that was like you said that you found that you had strong opinions towards email marketing. So I wonder what's the most important thing for you when it comes to email marketing? Like, what do you find that you're on your soapbox about most often?
About it not being like a one-way street. I think everybody just sees email, or not everybody, but a lot of people will see email as, when you see social media as being social, email is more me just like shouting into the void and like broadcasting my wisdom at everybody. And actually my approach has always been to start conversations and to deepen relationships, and to also spark like one-to-one interactions with people. I don't want to just have a list of 3,000 people that I broadcast at every day. I want to ask people questions, and then they reply with their opinions, and then we have a conversation, because everything, my entire foundation of my whole business since I started it has been on those one-to-one relationships. So I'm never gonna, and this is why I'll never outsource the writing of my emails. It will be the last thing I ever let go of. I won't ever let go of it, because it's so important to me that it's me writing from my brain and my heart, and me interacting with those replies as well. So there will be certain things that I will probably need support with in the future, but my emails will never be that, because it's the core of everything.
So I've in former life, before working for myself, I've written thousands of emails, I think, for asset distribution, for nurture campaigns, for broadcast messages, for notes from the CEO, from like the whole load of it. And I was very much of that mindset that this is ultimately, you're sending it to a person's inbox. Like, you should be speaking to them in that way. But it's amazing just how few of the organizations would it was all very much like hello, not just like hey or hi. It's like, no, that can't do that, non-professional. And like, I think, yeah, sure, you can be a professional working in a business, but I think email, since it's literally landing in your personal inbox, I think you owe it to the recipient to speak to them as a human being. And I don't know why that feels so alien and against the grain to some people, where it feels so natural. Like, and I don't, maybe you're the same, but like, I get emails from companies, and it's just like, they're just written in a way where you just immediately, it's like AI now, you can sort of spot it, and it's just like, no, that's not interested, like, doesn't speak to me at all. And it's weird that that's so alien to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's easier or more natural to write a natural human email when it's you and your personal brand and your business. So like, if you were writing a marketing email to your list, it would come from you. It wouldn't come from your business name, because it's natural that you write a message from you in an email. But I think some slightly bigger companies who have, like, say they've got somebody working in marketing, working in their business, it's difficult to know whether to send it from the business, whether to send it from the CEO, whether the marketing person sends it from them, as that, like, who becomes the, like, it's the Daniel Priestley thing, isn't it? It's the key person of influence, the person who is the face of the business and the personal brand, because that is another cliche. People buy from people. It's a cliche for a reason, because it's true. And people are not going to, like, if you're a lawnmower company and you pop up in my inbox with like your lawnmower company name, I'm going to be much less interested than if you're like Dave Smith, the lawnmower man. And I think, oh, Dave, I like him.
Yeah. Good old Dave with his lawnmowers.
Oh, Dave.
So I try and have some of these, like, to have a little mini case study, or a kind of something for people to take away and learn from. And you've already given loads of like really good advice, but I wonder if you can just share it's difficult, I guess, because you're teaching people to do it rather than doing it for them. But like, what are some of what's probably like the client that you kind of point to when you're on calls with people? Like, what did you do for them? Like, how has marketing or email marketing following working with you sort of impacted them? Like, what's your kind of case study of success, I guess?
I love this question. Not that I've ever been asked this question, but it's a good question because someone comes to mind straight away. So for various reasons. So this time last year, maybe kind of May last year, I was approached by a plumbing and heating company who are based in Kent, and they are really big on like eco credentials and really wanted to get that across, and also were quite keen to be less reactive in the business that they were doing, or the sales that they were making. So the nature of their business, or the biggest chunk of their business, was boilers breaking down, or like emergency repairs, that kind of thing, call outs. And they wanted some kind of more recurring, more trust-based sales in their business. And they knew that they had kind of 2,500 previous customers that they'd done that emergency work for, that they were doing nothing with. Now they were just kind of sat there on a database, an archaic database of kind of festering old clients who they were never going to contact again unless their boiler broke down, which hopefully they won't, because they fixed it very well. So I spoke to the MD initially, the owner of the company, and then ended up working with his head of marketing. And I took him through, it was actually a one-to-one process. I took him through my whole process of kind of setting up his email list and bringing, and in the right way, like without spamming people or annoying them, getting those old customers and getting them onto the marketing email list rather than the customer list that they were previously on. We built out a strategy for sending a regular email that was getting that like tone of voice of the CEO across and their credentials and getting to know their team and their values, the things that they believed in, so the eco side of things, all coming across. And they've done so well. Like, I think I can't remember the exact numbers because you have put me on the spot, otherwise I would have come with a proper case study. But in terms of actual results, because they were communicating with people who already trusted them because they'd already done work for them, that when they put out an email going, oh, we're doing this special offer on a boiler maintenance program or something like program, is that what it's called? Service? Boiler maintenance package, yeah, that'll do. Loads of people bought it without even thinking about it. Click, buy, and like massively increased their recurring revenue off the back of the fact that they'd really thought through what they wanted to say to people and how they wanted to stay front of mind. And also, it served a double effect because when people's boilers do break down, who are they going to think of? The people who are in their inbox week in, week out, sending these kind of nice, friendly, human emails with photos of the people who work for them. And you're much more likely to trust somebody who's been popping into your inbox week in, week out than you are just looking up someone in the yellow pages, if that even exists anymore.
Well, I think it's Check a Trade now. That's where, checkatrade.com. We get them.
Showing my age.
Yeah. The yellow. I used to work for Yellow Pages. I'll tell you about that another time. I did. Yeah. So last question from me. What does the future look like for you? Like 6 years in, or approaching 6 years, you've had a real like experimentative. No, you've experimented a lot. Yeah, experimental. You experimented a lot over the last sort of 18 months and sort of really seem to be hitting your stride. So what does the rest of this year look like? Are you looking that far ahead?
I actually am now. For the first time in 6 years, I actually have a plan for the rest of the year, which feels really nice. I know when workshops are taking place. I know when like cohorts of my group programs are taking place. It feels a bit alien to me because I'm used to being quite reactive and just kind of seeing what happens. And so it's nice to have a plan. In terms of what I want things to continue to be easier than they have been before. I'm just going to keep focusing on leverage. I think like those high leverage activities that I can do that bring me income without me having to deliver workshops in the summer holidays, because my ultimate aim is to be able to take August off every year and it be planned rather than it being like, oh, it's August and nobody's buying anything. Last year, I panicked because no one bought anything in August because I could only work 4 full days in the whole of August. So it felt like a failure. Whereas this year I've got a plan to not have to do any of that. And therefore August is just my like breathing month, which feels good as well. So more breathing, I think.
More breathing, more breathing and more leverage. Got it.
Yeah.
Katie, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.